Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so based on the sources you sent us, there's quite a palpable buzz in the air about self-driving cars.
Yeah, definitely.
And specifically, Tesla's really talked about Robotaxi launch down in Austin. Lots of promises flying around, big headlines. But what's really going on? We've gone through your material, trying to sort of cut through the hype and see what the reality is for this, well, pretty significant event. Let's unpack this.
Right. And the core tension here is, well, it's pretty striking. Is this a real innovation breakthrough? Or is it, as some of the sources you sent are suggesting, maybe a dangerous game of smoke and mirrors? Driven mostly by optics, which raises a really important question right off the bat. What does self-driving actually mean here, especially when you look back at the history?
That history.
Yeah.
The claims are crucial context, aren't they? What do the sources say about why these deadlines keep, well, slipping?
Well, the pattern seems pretty clear. For instance, sources point out Elon Musk claimed back in 2016 that Tesla would hit full autonomy. They even do a demonstration drive from LA to New York by the end of 2017. A car parking itself, quote, without the need for a single touch.
And yet, here we are.
Exactly. Here we are in 2025, and, well, that hasn't quite materialized. He's claimed unsupervised self-driving would be here by the end of the year for, gosh, almost a decade now.
It's almost a running gag at this point, like you said.
It kind of is, yeah. The key takeaway, I think, is that predicting these really complex tech breakthroughs, it often runs way ahead of the actual engineering reality.
Yeah.
So those historical claims become a critical benchmark for, future promises.
It is pretty jarring to see those past claims laid out, especially when you put them next to the current operational realities, even for others in this space.
Absolutely. I mean, for context, while Tesla's making headlines with this Austin launch, companies like Waymo, they're already operating pretty extensively. 4 cities now.
4 cities? Wow.
Yeah, doing over 200,000 paid rides every week. They actually expanded to Austin months ago already.
Okay, so that puts a lot of pressure on Tesla.
Immense pressure to sort of win this autonomous driving race, even if their own definition of what a robotaxi is has, well, shifted quite a bit.
How so?
Well, Musk himself once said, if you need a geofence area, you don't have real self-driving.
Okay.
Yet that's exactly what Tesla seems to be planning for Austin. A small internal fleet operating within these geofenced areas. Meaning specific designated pre-mapped zones where the cars can operate, and apparently avoiding certain tricky intersections too.
Right.
And what's more, some operations might rely on teleoperation.
Which is?
That's where human operators can remotely assist the vehicles if they get into, difficult situations.
So, hang on. We went from unsupervised self-driving, customers supposedly able to go to sleep, to geofenced zones and remote human help. That's a huge moving of the goalpost.
It really is.
And then you layer on the safety aspect. Critically important. Musk claims they're being paranoid with safety, but the testing approaches seem, well, pretty different.
Indeed. Waymo, for example, they tested for a full year in Austin. About 6 months with safety drivers, then another 6 without them before they actually launched their public service.
A full year, okay.
Tesla, on the other hand, based on the sources, tested with safety drivers for a few months, and it was only weeks before the planned launch they announced testing without them. Very different timeline.
Weeks versus a year.
Yeah. And another really striking point is Tesla's apparent reluctance to release intervention or disengagement data. That's pretty standard stuff in the industry.
So we don't know how often the system needs help.
Officially, no. Musk claims no safety driver, right? But sources have noted vehicles being spotted often with Tesla employees in the passenger seat who have access to a kill switch.
A kill switch, like a manual override.
Exactly, for immediate vehicle shutdown if needed. So functionally, they kind of are safety drivers, just not sitting behind the wheel. The best data we seem to have is crowdsourced, and it suggests a critical disengagement roughly every 444 miles for their latest hardware.
444 miles.
Yeah. Which implies a potentially high risk of an accident if there isn't constant human attention,
444 miles. That number, it's actually quite concerning if a driver isn't paying attention, let alone if there's supposedly no driver.
Yeah.
It's almost a chilling thought, really.
It is.
And when you add in demonstrations like the one from the Dawn Project showing vehicles with the same hardware failing to stop for school buses with stop signs out, potentially running over child-sized mannequins, it really underscores those concerns some sources have about optics maybe trumping safety. Makes you wonder, what is the priority?
Exactly. The whole situation seems to highlight that, even with the smoke and mirrors narrative and the clear pressure for a win, there are some really serious questions about readiness and, importantly, about verifiable safety data.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does this mean for you, our listener? We've looked at the history here, the big promises versus the reality. We've looked at the current operational details, things like geofencing, teleoperation, and the safety data, or maybe the lack of clear data. It certainly paints a complex picture, doesn't it? Innovation under, well, immense scrutiny.
It really does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole situation with Tesla's Robotaxi launch, it really highlights a critical challenge we see with a lot of new tech. How do you balance these really bold claims, this drive for progress, with, well, with verifiable steps forward and, most importantly, with safety?
Right.
It leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, I think. As autonomy keeps advancing, how do we, as consumers, as citizens, how do we ensure that innovation is genuinely safe? How do we make sure it's not just a cleverly designed illusion? Considering everything you brought to us, what stands out most to you from this deep dive?